Our next preference is, at the same time, one of the most powerful uses of group policy preferences, as well as one of the most difficult to perhaps sleuth and figure out exactly what you need to configure. That has to do with custom registry settings that you can find right up here if you're associated with computer configuration, and then down here if you're associated with the user configuration right here. Now, these are split apart in two different locations, in part because it provides you a way to determine whether you want to apply that setting to either HKey local computer or HKey current user. Further, depending on where you end up applying this GPO, you may want to apply the GPO based off of the users that are in that GPO, as opposed to the computers that are in that GPO. So let's say, for example, that every machine that happens to have a copy of Adobe Reader needs to have some little characteristic change, like removing the splash screen from Adobe Reader. And so for that reason, you probably don't want to set this to user configuration because you want to enforce it on all the different machines in the environment. Let's go down here to Registry, and then here choose to create a new registry item. This registry item allows us to make a change to HKey local machine, or to HKey current user, or essentially the user that's logged on at that period of time. Notice here that because we're making this change in the computer configuration half, this change will occur instead to HKey users /default, because the computer configuration half of a GPO is applied when that machine powers on, as opposed to when the user logs in. This will be slightly different than what might happen down here if we made the same change down here under HKey users. So here under HKey users, if I attempt to create a new registry item, I can choose to select that against HKey current user. Now our goal here is to make a change to HKey current user for that specific setting that exists for Adobe Acrobat Reader. And that setting is actually in HKey current user, so it may actually be better for us to apply this in the user configuration half as opposed to adjusting the default HKey users hive. Let me actually show you down here where the registry setting exists. So this is just from a sample machine. It's actually the desktop where all these virtual machines are running, where I've got a lot of different software that's been installed, where we can take a look at just some of the registry settings that are associated with those pieces of software. Now here under HKey current user, this is my user hive. This is the hive that exists associated with my user. It's part of my user profile. And if I drill down here in HKey current user, down here to the software node, I can take a look here under Adobe and then Acrobat Reader version 11. And then here are all the individual configurations that define that user experience for me, my specific user experience, anytime I'm working with Adobe Reader. Your job as an administrator, in certain cases, can be to improve that experience for users. So you may find that your users just hate, I don't know, the splash screen to come popping up the first time they launch Acrobat Reader. And so you may task yourself with the job of actually fixing that problem and eliminating the splash screen from appearing whenever Reader first launches. Actually figuring out where that occurs is a topic for another day. It's kind of an advanced topic that involves either digging around in Adobe's website to try to find what this means, or alternatively, doing some very careful changes to settings inside of Reader and then seeing what they change here inside of the registry. I've already identified that down here under Originals is this location called Be Displayed Splash, which in my case shows a 1 because I've already displayed the splash screen, but will show a 0 whenever the splash screen has not been displayed for this user. So in order to eliminate that splash screen, what I might want to do here is configure through a registry GPP this Be Displayed Splash location as a value of having 1 as opposed to the default value of 0. Let's make that change here in order to actually improve the entire user experience for our users. I'll come back here under HKey current user, and the key path I'm looking for will be under HKey current user. And then from here, I can actually define exactly where I want to go. So for example, HKey current user /software, then /Adobe Acrobat Reader 11.0 and Originals. This is the key path that we're interested in. The value name then is Be Displayed Splash. It's a value type of a reg D word, and the value data we're interested in is the decimal value of 1, actually. All I've done here is just simply copy the contents of the registry for a machine that is behaving in the way that I want it to, in order to then disseminate out that behavior by virtue of a registry change here, so that every user will have that similar behavior the next time they launch Adobe Reader. As I mentioned, this is perhaps the most powerful use of group policy preferences that you can bring to bear. It is one of the most difficult ways that you can use GPPs, but if you find that you have users who are complaining about a certain behavior of an application, or if you have an app that has that never ever ever check this box where the application explodes, well, you can ensure that that configuration is always configured correctly by configuring it as a registry value if the configuration is stored somewhere in the registry. You will have to sort of dig around to find out where that is, and that's a somewhat cumbersome process. But the value here in being able to pre-configure the registry for your users is incredible towards ensuring that the user experience for them is exactly what they expect.